Cox.
Aye.
Pratt.
Aye.
Castanis. Collin. Yee.
Here.
Toby Johnson. Dickinson.
Here.
Panay.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Let me just read this statement. This meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the government affairs channel on the Sacramento cable system. Today's item is being cablecast live and will be repeated Friday, June 3rd at 9 a.m. A VHS copy is also available for checkout from any branch library of the city and the county of Sacramento. Members of the audience wishing to address the commission should please fill out a speaker identification form located on the back table and give it to the secretary at the front desk here. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the commission and state your name for the record. All right. So, if we could have item 1.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. Councilman Yee just mentioned a minute ago about the audio system in this chambers. I call to your attention that the microphones before you have a cone-shaped response area in front of them. And to the extent that you've turned the mics down slightly, they're more apt to pick up rustling of papers, etc. And we have had calls on Metro Cable, and Mr. Yee just reminded me of the same thing.
Okay.
Item 1 is a follow-up on a report I gave to you last week regarding an aspect of rate regulation determination having to do with a filing by Sacramento Cable Television on May 16th, amending their previously filed FCC Form 393s to the effect of taking settlement fees from our 1988 litigation settlement and applying those to, or potentially applying those to subscribers' bills as franchise fees. We believe there's a clear distinction. I circulated to you last August a legal opinion by then Commission Counsel Blair. McDonough through Harriet have reviewed the same information and concur with the position then. We advised, or I'm recommending in the staff report, several courses of action. However, as recently as a couple of hours ago, Sac Cable asked to speak in this item early on the agenda. So my recommendation would be that you ask Sac Cable, Penny Costa, their counsel, to speak with you first, to address you first.
You would like that now?
Yes, I think
Okay.
it's appropriate to hear what they have to say first.
All right, Ms. Costa, please come forward.
Thank you. We have, in the last several days, we have met and talked with Mr. Spasto and Ms. Steiner. And at this point in time, Sacramento Cable would like to advise you, as we have advised them, that although we have a disagreement over whether or not the settlement payments constitute franchise fees under the FCC regulations, we have determined that we are not going to include those amounts for purposes of calculating the new rates to go into effect in the next month or so. So what we are going to do is notify by letter both yourselves and the FCC that we do not intend to include the settlement payments at this time, and we will either file an amended Form 393 or we will serve you with a notice of rescinding the last one. And we expect to do that within the next week. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to respond.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Yes, Mr. Yee.
Rich, does that mean that we still have to act on this item, or is that just set in the back burner?
No, my recommendation is that we still act on the item, but I would like to amend it as recommended before you in order to clarify a few things. What Penny just said is that the company is rescinding its May 16th filing, either to rescind it or to revise it again, but in any event, not to pursue the settlement fees as franchise fees issues at this time. I appreciate that we worked hard on getting this resolved in the last few days. My recommendation would be that the resolution before you still be enacted, however, with some amendments. And the reason for that is twofold. One, as Penny just indicated, the company is reserving its right to pursue this matter with higher authority. I believe it's best in the public interest that the commission, in open session at this hearing, make a determination of its position. That is proven to be successful, and Harry can back this from a legal standpoint. When the legislative body acts in public upon advice from staff, upon comments from the public, the judicial review, the strength of the judicial review is enhanced. I would be concerned now that if there is a subsequent higher review and the commission hasn't acted, one of the points that could be made would be that the commission didn't act. The commission did not ratify its council's opinion that settlement fees are not franchise fees. So it would be my recommendation that the resolution be amended to delete the last 3 lines after the word subscriber in its title. And sections 3...
What are you reading?
I'm sorry, this is
Attachment 3?
Attachment 3 to the item, the resolution. And that in effect, the enforcement provisions or the sanction provisions or the notice to the cable company that there could be sanctions, that is sections 3 and 4, be eliminated, and section 5 be renumbered as section 3. This then would have the commission make a finding that settlement fees are not franchise fees, clearly advise your operator thereof, and put on the record formally for a further review the actions and positions.
Okay, let's go back over that again. We have attachment 3 in the back of our item number 1.
That's correct.
And you're speaking to what? Are you speaking to paragraphs?
I'm speaking to first the title of the resolution. Right now it's unnumbered attachment 3, that the last 3 lines be completely eliminated.
Last 3 line of what?
Of the title.
After it says resolution of
Right. There's bold caps at the top.
Yes.
At the line 4th from the bottom, a period or the title end after the word subscribers.
Okay.
Oh, okay, from there on.
From there on, and that any violation be...
Yeah.
That whole part is
correct.
deleted. Okay.
And that 2 pages forward,
Which would be page further on. you
which
mean.
is the page that begins with the word line quote. That is the last page of the resolution in which the vote would be recorded. On that page, that sections 3 and 4 having to do with what I call the enforcement, but the notice, the disclosure of possible enforcement actions, at this time be eliminated, and paragraph 5 be renumbered as paragraph 3.
Okay, got it.
This
Okay.
then takes no enforcement action, is only an order, a definition of findings. Harriet,
Okay.
things to add, or we okay?
No, I think you said it all.
All right,
All right,
any
thanks.
questions from the commission on that?
Well, I'd like to understand just a little bit more, Penny, maybe from you, where you are procedurally. I thought what you had said was that Sacramento Cable has decided not to press this issue in terms of its interpretation for
At this-
purposes of rate determination.
At this point in time, that's true. We have not included it and are not including it in our calculation of rates for the upcoming period. We do disagree with the interpretation of the Commission and its counsel, and we do want to make clear that we've reserved our right to raise it at a future time if we deem it necessary or appropriate to do so. There is no, action contemplated now. We're just reserving the right to make clear our position should it become advisable to revisit the issue in the future.
Yeah, so
That's all.
what you want to preserve is your right to reassert the interpretation.
Yes.
Either before the commission or in some proceeding asking for declaratory relief, for example?
That's right. And what that might be or if that might occur is not anything that we can say at this point.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right. Any other questions from the commission?
Adoption of the resolution as amended.
Second?
Okay. There's been a motion by Mr. Cox, a second by Ms. Collin. Is there any public testimony on this item? Any public testimony on this item? We're deleting the after subscribers. We're putting a period in the resolution, and we're striking the rest of that intro. In the last page, section 4, we're taking section 4 completely out, and we're renumbering the existing section 5 to section 4.
Section 3.
Section 3.
3 is coming out too as well,
Yeah.
John.
Oh, 3 is
four.
coming out.
3 and 4.
And it'll be renumbered
3 and 4
section
both.
3.
Okay. Section 3 and section 4 is coming out. And then it's going to be renumbered section
3.
4? 3. Or section
5
3?
becomes 3.
Huh?
5 becomes 3.
5 becomes 3, not 4. Somehow I heard a 4.
3 and 4 is deleted.
Yep, 3 and 4 is deleted. Section 5 becomes Section 3. Any further comments from the commission?
Yeah, who's on first?
I'm not there yet, so... all right, well, please call the roll.
Cox.
Aye.
Pratt.
Aye.
Collin.
Yes.
Yee.
Yes.
Dickinson.
Aye.
Panay.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, as an aside under this item on rate regulation determination, for your information only, no action required, brief update on where we are in the rate process. Recall that there's 2 processes going on. One is, I'll call it FCC 1, and the other is FCC 2. FCC 1 has to do with Form 393s, FCC 2 has to do with Form 1200s. We continued the process on FCC 1, on the Form 393s, until August 31st. That is, you have not made a determination on the rates submitted by Sacramento Cable Television now in 3 or 4 revisions. We continue to work through them and make those points. The consultant we retained last month has written a list of questions that Cable has responded. That process is going on. Separately, under FCC 2, the cable industry nationwide must comply with those new requirements with a notice to subscribers as of June 14th. So between now and June 14th, Sacramento Cable will be issuing a disclosure notice. That is a disclosure notice that we're working now to integrate the requirements of your local regulations with the federal regulations to subscribers, providing them with the new rates and charges on FCC 2. The requirement for the cable operators to file the Form 1200s with us follows that date by 60 days at the outside. So not sooner than August 13th, I'm sorry, not later than August 13th, will Sac Cable must file its Form 1200s. It's going to be my recommendation that with the help of our consultant, we bring the analysis on the FCC 1 Form 393s and the analysis of the Form 1200s, FCC 2, together into one single public hearing. It might take a few hours, and make one set of determinations on everything. I think we can do it as cleanly, as simply as possible at that time. The question becomes one of timing. I think this is a good time to bring up an administrative problem that we have. One is we've checked. This is the first time we've had a situation in July where both the board and city council are recessing during our normal meeting week. So as of now, we don't have an agenda for the July meeting, nor do we have, we don't have a quorum for the July meeting, nor do we have what I feel to be enough items for an agenda. So as we move forward in today's meeting and we look at schedules and look at rate determinations, what we're moving toward is a special meeting or a rescheduled meeting near the end of August to address rate determination. So that's how I kind of bring it all together. There will be some changes, there will be some press, there will be some constituent confusion probably, because every time rates have changed in the last 10 years, there's some confusion. We're working on the disclosure to make that as simple as possible. Your step in the process, interestingly enough, comes after the rates have changed. I'm recommending somewhere along the second or third week in August we address that.
Will that be at a special meeting you're proposing?
A special meeting or a rescheduling of your July or your August meeting. At this point, I do not foresee enough items for an August agenda meeting either.
Okay. All right.
Hope that
Any
helps.
questions on that, members? All right, then we'll proceed to item 2.
Item 2 is the administrative budget for the Commission for 1994-95. For the first time, with your amendment of the grant agreements last year, the community programming grantees' budgets are included within this review. I'll note that I have a slideshow presentation available for you if you'd like. I want to remind you that your calendars reflect a 4:15 joint city council board meeting in this chamber. So we've been requested by your respective jurisdictions. I'm sorry, your meeting's at 4:30. We've been requested by your respective jurisdictions to vacate by 4:15. I'd be happy to walk through staff's presentation of the budget with or without the slides in any order and any detail that you would request. Or if you'd like, I could just respond to questions.
I was doing it now.
Are there...
I have some questions regarding the budget.
if we want to deal with specific.
But do you wish to have them go through the budget, or you just...
Doesn't make any difference to me, but I do have some questions regarding the budget.
Okay. Anyone else have any?
I have general questions.
Okay, so
Not
it
line
sounds
item.
like it's more questions.
Okay,
So-
I'd be happy to respond to questions, and
I didn't
and
hear
or do
anyone
the
say they wanted to
presentation.
go through the whole presentation in slides, no? Okay. And I've been reminded, Mr. Pane had to go, I think just temporarily, and he reminded me that I am vice chair. Is that correct?
I believe Mr. Dickinson is vice
Dickinson.
chair.
Oh, good. It's terrible.
I was hoping it was you.
No, I couldn't remember who was chair or vice chair.
Well, thank you.
Good. It's yours.
All the instruments of power, huh?
Yeah, now you've got it, Roger. Now let me
Okay.
check these out. They were
All
all
right.
for number 2 to be heard.
Dave, do you want to ask your
Or do you
question?
want questions first?
On page number 4 of your 1994-95 commission report, I think it's important that the facility, the cable commission administration, be located in a proper facility. I do have some concern, however, of continually watching county offices, as well as I see some city offices being in the central library complex. And I have some real questions as to whether or not we ought to be paying the kind of rent that you have to pay there over the period of time, when perhaps we might ought to be in a more functional, modest facility than to be there. And so I do have some questions about that, and it's noted that you have allocated $5,500 increase for that, and I frankly would not support that kind of high-profile building.
But this is to move us out of that building, sir. We are currently...
Yes, but you're talking about, at the same time, you're talking about being in that general vicinity. The city's Capitol Park garage, I thought, was...
I'll comment, yes, but glad to discuss this and all the different variables. We are pretty well very much up to speed on rent costs downtown. That space, as of a letter received Tuesday, is not available to us. We met with the city, and they can't break up the parking garage space to accommodate us. So at this point, we're back to status quo. The issue, if I may, is that we are on the 5th floor of the central library. We were there at the request of the city manager and county executive. It has some advantages to staff in that we share some of our facilities with various library administration folks. We share the fax machine, copy machine, etc. Some of the negatives are the building is secure and locked down on Mondays, so it's difficult to access. It's closed until 11 o'clock. We have to go through many security checks to get someone up to see us. It's a deterrent to the public, to our contractees, etc. Our experience was that we were on the ground floor before in the old library administration building. We were much more accessible to the public, and the drop-in rate gave us a sense of being more accessible and helpful to the public.
Chairman, that's my point precisely, and that is the central library complex or the city's Capitol Park perhaps doesn't offer the flexibility that it's needed, and so I would ask that we be very cognizant of taking a look at the space that's available, not get ourselves into a situation that doesn't make a great deal of sense.
Right. It would be my hope that we could find space within the city or county structure so that our rent payment would continue to go back to one of our parental entities.
I noted on page 7 that the funding...
Could I follow through on that, though, before you end that thought, Dave?
Well, let's see if he wants to do that, or whether he'd like to get his other questions in first.
Okay, I just
Okay.
wanted to follow up on
Okay.
on preferables on rent.
Space?
Okay, on the space rent, because I thought that was the topic before you went to another one. And it would seem to me that I would also agree that if there were space in one of the parental entities, that would be on a ground floor where there was more visibility, so you would have the drop-in. I know you had weren't you in a bank storefront type before where it was very visible, public knew you were there and could get in, rent was reasonable. I think that's what we're all looking for, rather than where it's much harder to access. I mean, even here at the county, the commission was located here once in the offices that Dave's in now.
That's correct.
And we got crunched for space, so you got bumped out, and that was more reasonable. But it did make it more difficult in some ways for the public. because they had to go through a different layer to get back there. But I agree with you, Dave. If we could find something reasonable. I don't know about the city garage. You mean those vacant spaces down below that face the plaza? That
Right,
would be very accessible.
Right. The city council just released that space for more routine business use rather than commercial use.
Oh.
However, the tenants that have bid out the space have not left a piece for us that would fit our needs. If we want to
That's
rent
too
4,000
bad.
square feet, we could, but we need something less than that, considerably less than 1,000 square feet. So they advised us this week that that space was not available. So we'll keep looking. The cost per square foot is very competitive downtown. The difficulty is in why the $5,000 was, one, the cost of moving, cost $1,000 approximately to move. Two is telephones. I'd like very much to stay on the county switch, the county phone system, because right now the commission's phone number is on the back of every cable bill.
Yeah.
And to change that, it can run $100 a month per line to move those lines over. So that's why it was our factors are limited. And the third one is that it's important to us to have a cable drop to be able to monitor this room as well as the rest of the system. When there's fuzzy pictures, outages, we can say, yes, we agree, no, we don't. And so they're as we go down the list of priorities, we narrow very, very quickly.
Mr. Yee on this point or a different one?
Yes.
Mr. Yee on this point, yeah.
All right.
On the space, because that was one of the items that I had marked on my booklet here regarding rental. And you mentioned the L Street garage. Actually, the city does have space on the I Street garage, which is Lot I, and it should be a lot
That was
more
the one I was
reasonable.
thinking of.
What?
Okay.
The I Street garage. That's
Yes.
the one I was thinking of, too. It's very visible to the
It's
plaza.
it's on ground floor.
We're talking about the waterfall building?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the one that just wrote us a letter and said there would not be space to accommodate us.
Why not?
The space that the Traffic Operations Center took,
They still have a for lease sign on there.
I'm not familiar with the policy decision the city made, but I did meet with the 4 city real estate people last Tuesday, and they responded that we'd love to accommodate you, but we don't have a way to divide the building that fits our space.
Mr. Yee, do you want to be a subcommittee of one to investigate
Yes,
this?
Jimmy.
I certainly will.
Yeah, because that was where the chairman suggested that he referred me to the city people.
How many square feet you need?
800 to 1,000, depending on
800 to 1,000?
Right. And they said the way the building divided, that piece didn't carve out. Something about the Traffic Operations Center allocation of piece. And I met with, I can't recall the names right now, and I did get a letter I'll share with you right after the meeting.
Mark Morgan?
No, Gary Wada?
No.
Walt Wada?
Walt Ueda?
Walt Wada.
You talked to him?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Cox, back to you, but were you arguing in favor of not including that 5,000 in the budget?
Yeah, I just wanted to.
5,500?
I wanted to make my point as it related to the space from the standpoint of its utility value, and I don't think it makes a great deal of sense to have this commission's offices on the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th floor, 15th floor, and I'm also concerned about the cost. And only just as a policy guidance as he begins to look for space as to what the functionality ought to be.
Okay. You've heard the policy guidance.
But reflect staff feelings as well.
Okay.
On page 7, I note all of the lists of those that are entities that are being televised, but from time to time I notice on Channel 14 that there are the Assembly and Senate California. Do they pay their fair share?
No, they don't. The Assembly and Senate provide us the tapes, and we then play it back under the broader authorities delegated in the programming regulations. You've delegated to staff the decision whether to run bulletin board or outside programming, outside educational programming. The costs, I have to ask staff, but it's a matter of putting the tapes in the machine and programming the machine with one tape versus another tape.
Do the entities that are listed on page 7 pay any kind of remuneration for?
No, they don't. Under your established policies, if an entity meets in this chamber or the city council chamber as an official government meeting, we will do everything in our power, and this is the current list, to cablecast their meetings live and replay at no cost to those entities.
But SMUD pays a stipend.
That's correct. Under the
Does Folsom
policies,
pay a stipend?
no. Two aspects. if it's one of our parental jurisdictions, the county, the city, Folsom, or Galt, we've taken that since 1987 as a direction from the commission to cablecast their meetings because they are part of the joint powers entity and part of the decision to combine the community programming, the government programming resources. So they are covered within this budget. Because of the efficiencies of this room and the city council chamber, we also cover it within this budget. That's a recommendation repeated to you each year. An outside entity, an entity where we have to roll the truck, the van, and or go out and preview a site for use, we request that those entities reimburse us for those costs. So that's been the policy separation. Staff has tried to keep the commission away from the issue of what meetings to cover and not to cover on a topical basis or a content basis. We've tried to stay with a general policy. If you're in this chamber, the city council chamber, we'll get you on. If it's an outside request, because we're not budgeted for that, you'll need to reimburse us on an on-cost basis.
This is one member who would prefer to see the planning commissions televised as opposed to the Senate or the Assembly, only from a local interest standpoint, or the city planning commission meetings televised, or the project planning committees televised as opposed to the Assembly and the Senate. I don't certainly I acknowledge that those are worthwhile meetings. The point that I'm making to you is that as it relates to space and time, I would prefer certainly to see
Right, Mr. Cox, there's a big difference there. We proposed in last year's performance grants cable casting of planning commission meetings, and my recollection of the analysis at that time was that the planning commission equaled the amount of time in this chamber as the Board of Supervisors. Again, I recall that the policy recommendation or the staff recommendation to cover those was to cover the planning commissions of all four entities in order to be equal, and the cost was approximately $46,000 or $47,000 because that meant an active role on our part, whereas with the Senate and Assembly tapes, we're responding to a request from them on time we have available that has no basic cost to us. They provide us the tape, we put it in the machine and play it. I'd be happy to restaff the issue of planning commission and bring it back to you again.
with respect to the proposed budget attachment 2.1. It talks about the other operating expenses of $40,000, and I didn't tie that back. What is the other operating expenses of $40,000?
The primary change of other operating expenses this year, and I've addressed it in a bit of detail in the text on page 4, triggered primarily with an increase of approximately $25,000 in the countywide cost allocation plan. This is the county indirect cost model, and something that we as operating departments get right before budget time. It has to do with the indirect costs allocated to our share of the 3-year audit conducted 2 years ago. And so the primary change in that line item was the increase from $10,334 to $35,821 in the county's indirect. That will then drop next year because we didn't have an audit 1 year ago. We had an audit 2 years ago. It's the roll forward calculation of county indirect. So that's where that line item shows up from this functional display.
Help me out. Then how does it become the $40,021?
Okay. Again, on page 4 of the text.
I've read page 4.
Okay.
On page 4, the text doesn't seem to me to add up to 40,000, and I may have just missed something.
Right. My point on page 4 is the countywide indirect cost is reflected on that item in 2.1. And as you go across other operating expenses, it varies year by year depending on what the countywide allocation is, coming back from 2 years ago. So we had virtually, relatively speaking, we had virtually no indirect in 93, 94, and then an increase this year. That line item also, that other operating expense also includes other line items such as telephone, and I believe, go back, there's one more item in there besides telephone. Does that help? Are we getting there? Or?
Well, you're saying that if you look at 93, 94, you've got $4,300 in that category. That reflects zero in terms of this countywide cost allocation, I guess.
That's correct.
So now you're going to 35,000 and 94, 95. And if you look at the 4,300, if that's staying relatively constant without doing the addition, you come up to about 40,000,
Right.
plus or minus.
Yeah, I think,
So you've got other miscellaneous items thrown in that other
Right.
operating expense category.
right, in addition
obviously.
to the countywide cost allocation, and unfortunately right now I can't recall what that difference is. I'll have to get it for you.
Can you specify what you have put in that category in a follow-up for Commissioner Cox?
Yes, from memory, it might be the additional 5,500 for the facilities, for the phone aspect.
Only as a matter of information, Mr. Chairman, we don't have to resolve it to this very second, other than we're probably going to pass a budget. I noted that the estimate was 4,300 and that's supposed to include the countywide allocation, which was supposedly 10,334, 93.94. So where's that $10,300?
Do you understand what he's asking?
Yes, I am. Good, fine. I'll staff it for you and bring it back to you.
Okay, that'd be fine, thank you. With respect to the $10,000, I noted that you'd put in the contingencies, but what would the contingency include in your mind?
In times past, contingencies have included adjustments to any personnel costs, which might be approved. What your practice has been is to provide commission staff the same changes in cost of living that are applied to the county. So if you were to award such a thing to the general county as a whole, it would be transferred out of contingencies.
And that's not in the 246 to 245,000 that you're budgeting for this year?
Where are you at 245? The contingencies is included in the budget.
That's my question to you. In the salary and wages, the
No, it is not.
245,000 does not include the contingencies for the total.
No, it
that you're
does not.
asking?
The contingencies would take an affirmative act by you to move into an operating line item expense. In the current year, 93, 94, there were no expenditures under contingencies, and there were no transfers approved by you. But in order to spend that, you would have to approve a transfer.
There's somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 20% increase as far as the administration costs are concerned. How can we justify the commission's increase of 20%? There's 16% as it relates to the legal counsel. I'm just wondering why we've ratcheted that up by 16%.
You're looking at the subtotal of the operations budget from past year to current year?
Yes, sir.
The moving from 427,000 to 470,000?
Well, I'm looking at the entire budget of $1.9 million versus $2.1 million.
The key thing on the $1.9 million, first off, there's an increase in distribution to the counties and city that passes through your budget. If you look at the third line from the bottom, revenue distribution, instead of giving the cities and counties 340,000, we're giving them 500,000. So there's 160,000 increase right there. That is your policy of distributing 20% of revenues received by the commission off the top directly to the parental jurisdictions. So that's one piece of it. I would refer to the on the operating budget side under subtotal for operations. The movement between the 427 and the 470 is, as I indicated before, you've got an increase in countywide cost allocation. We've built in $5,500 for facilities. You've got $8,000 for your financial consultant, which you've already approved. You've made a contract or an adjustment to the executive director's salary, and I believe when you put all those together, it accounts for the increase of the operations budget from 427 to 470.
Okay.
And you've got overall legal going up about 21,000.
That's correct, in the overall total.
Okay.
With respect to the next page on attachment 2.
Attachment 2.
Attachment 2.2, sir?
Attachment 2.2, where it talks about the designated reserve of $1,800,000.
$1,700,000 going to $1.8 million at the end of next year. That's correct.
Let's talk about fund condition. Maybe my glasses. Maybe it's my voice and glasses. Under designated reserve, it talks about $1,810,000
Right, at the end of next year.
at the end of next year. And that, okay, so that's something that you're saying will come in between now and...
Right. Your actions 2 months ago directed staff to set aside $1.7 million as a designated reserve. You will do that effective July 1st. The $1,810,000 is staff's projection of the interest, which would accrue to that $1.7 million, which was part of your direction as well. So on June 30th next year, based on a 6.5% pooled money investment return, we estimate that you'll have $1.810 million in that designated reserve.
So next year that will be a designated reserve as opposed to an undesignated reserve?
That's correct. As of, if you pass the budget as recommended, on July 1st, that will become a designated reserve.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions, Mr. Conley?
Jimmy does.
Oh, Mr. Yee.
Thank you. Rich, I have several questions here. Going back to the page 7, I guess, where we talk about production assistant 1 and 2.
Yes.
Where we are recommending that an additional step be made to 3.
That's correct.
How does this compare with outside technicians?
It compares very, very favorably. This is a staffing series which you adopted using the housing and redevelopment model. They have a term called housing assistance. What you approved following a independent consultant study in August, September, December of '89 was what we call, what you refer to as a deep class. The key points about this class are that you directed staff based on market conditions to recruit production assistants, the staff people that are operating your cameras.
Are these?
Yes, these are your production assistants.
Okay.
But that their salaries, the salary ranges of those positions, would not adjust by cost of living adjustments applied to other general positions. But the market would dictate if we could retain production assistants, essentially interns, without having to adjust the salaries, we would. You delegated to staff the authority, however, to move individuals within the structure who were demonstrating proficient work. So what this is saying is that we've had 2 levels of this class. We've made no cost of living adjustments to this series in almost 5 years now, recommending that you put the 3rd level of the class in now as well.
It's what you call flex staffing.
Flex staffing.
Yeah. I want to know whether 3, production assistant 3, their salary level, how does that compare with, say, our grantees? Do they have similar positions?
In '89, when you surveyed this, yes, and the rate determinations made in '89 reflected very carefully. I've done no follow-up studies since then, but if the process has worked as it should, the individual employees should have moved along the step scale and stayed consistent with the marketplace.
Did you check this previous year?
No, I have not checked this previous year. Our check has been when we've advertised for production assistants, what has been the number of responses we've gotten, and we've gotten 40 to 60 for 3 or 4 vacancies.
Yeah.
So the market, that has told us in the marketplace that we are still reasonable.
Commissions, things like that.
Okay. Going on to 2-1, I guess, is on under salaries and benefits. Looking at the benefit portion, where the previous year was $61,500, and for the proposed budget year, it'll be $69,000. What's included in this increase?
I can provide you the full detail, but
I don't want the full details.
The computer model will crank in the increase in base on OSDI. I believe there's also an increase in rate on Social Security. The authorized adjustment to the health benefits allocation, workers' comp, all the usual affiliated or related benefits.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because I'm looking at salaries and wages, and there's no increase in salary and wages, yet our benefits gone up, and I generally look at it as a sort of a proportional increase, because
yeah, we'll go back and check. I don't recall now what the base is done on Medicare, Social Security, but that usually would Medicare, Social Security, and health benefits are the things you.
But that's the reason I'm asking.
Right. There haven't been any increases in salary, so maybe we're starting to get some closer detail there. If you want, I don't.
Just take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll bring you the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It's a spreadsheet model that's pretty well standardized that just pumps those numbers out.
The other question I have is in under service and supplies, other operating expenses. And last year we had estimated, or actual was $7,800, but we have budgeted for this coming year $40,000. Why the big increase?
Right. This is the same question Mr. Cox asked. I'd like to get back to you and put those pieces together. Right now, from memory, I can't do it at that level of detail. The big change has to do with the countywide cost allocation plan, going back to the audit 2 years ago.
Give me the same information. That,
I'll copy all of you on it.
another question I have has to do with the money that we're, or the revenue that we're distributing back to our parental distribution entities. Is that part of our setup? Is that 20% of our revenue will go back to the parental entities as sort of a franchise fee?
Yes, exactly. That was established in the franchise ordinance in 1981-82. You put that on hiatus during the period of litigation.
Yes.
Said it wouldn't apply until new revenue started coming back in, and then you re-implemented it last year. So the franchise ordinance reads such that 20% of the franchise license revenue off the top goes to the jurisdictions based on census, on population.
All right.
You then approve an operating budget, and then it would, way back when it was discussed that you approve the operating budget and then would decide what to do with the rest, hold it in reserve or give it back to the grantees.
My last question, it has to do with future revenues. What is going to finance the future of the Cable Commission? Or where is this money coming from after 1996? Or
Okay. If we assume for the moment that there's no changes at the federal level relative to the payment of franchise fees by cable operators, if you make that assumption, then revenues will continue from Sacramento Cable Television at approximately $2.5 million a year, or 2.5% of their gross revenues.
so we do continue to have franchise fees above and beyond our settlement fee?
Right. We clearly call these settlement fees. They are not franchise fees. And
I understand.
But the link is, first off, to answer your question, yes, there is continuing ongoing revenue throughout the life of the franchise from Sacramento Cable Television. So we talked before, the potential and prospects for changes at the federal level, if there were to be changes at the federal level, about franchise fees. That change would carry over to our settlement fees.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
I have one, having page 7, the item on the robotic cameras here in the chambers.
Yes, sir.
And that's a proposal that you intend to implement, you propose to implement this year.
That's correct. I'd like to have it implemented by October if we possibly could. The staff's, Randy Gwynn, production director's analysis is that we can make that camera and possibly that camera robotic, and at a cost which would break even within the current year, within the budget year.
At a cost that would break even in terms of compared to what production or personnel costs?
That's correct.
I guess that raises a couple questions. One is a practical question of just my own observation of robotic cameras is they can tend to be either very jerky or very slow, as in too late in focusing because they're voice actuated generally. I don't know if that's the technology here or not.
No, what the proposal is from Randy is not digitally driven preset robotics. This is one that would be controlled as that one is from the back. So
you're talking about from the production source.
Right. They would have a joystick in the back that could move the camera. The jerkiness issue is a critical one if we are to mount this camera. This one looks like it'll work very well because it would mount against the wall, and that camera is primarily used for this position, as I believe it's on now, and for this position there is not a lot of movement. We were over at, staff was over at the Capitol, or going to the Capitol this week. The Capitol feeds from the 4 chambers there are all on robotics.
Okay. Well, that was one question. I didn't know whether you might want to try one instead of both.
We will probably have to bring up one at a time just because of the wiring aspects, and then see how it progresses. I'll comment that 4 years ago this was extremely cost prohibitive. Now it looks like we have a a no net cost increase.
The second was, that's right, that was really the second, where do the people go in terms of the budget? Is there, there's presumably a cost savings, but as Mr. Yee was pointing out, the salaries and wages are staying at roughly the same figure, so.
Right. The production assistants that we have tremendous talent. They for the most part, pass through our organization with experience, knowledge, and a broader sense of what's happening in government. This is an intern-type position. We don't provide, it's a part-time temporary position. There are no benefits. We find that with a high percentage of students, they move on, and then we're in a situation of recruiting once a year. Bottom line is, by attrition, we would just bring the number of, I believe now there's 17 or 16 production assistants on the payroll, working not more than 20 hours a week. On Tuesdays, virtually everybody works. The rest of the week is pretty quiet. So attrition will accommodate the staffing.
And I mean, you were saying a moment ago they're paid nothing, but that's not true. They're paid something.
They are paid something.
No benefits.
But no benefits.
No benefits.
And part-time.
It's a part-time temporary position.
But if they're paid something and there's going to be attrition, then presumably wages and salaries at least would go down some, wouldn't it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
But
yes.
it's not. But it's not doing that per the budget. It's going up very slightly.
Let's look at the detail. I believe that the production is going down because that's how we offset the.
I mean, there are increases in other. I didn't get all the way into the detail, but are there increases in other personnel?
On attachment 10.1, we've taken the functional budget and broken it between administration, regulation, and programming. And the programming budget for personnel is going from $133,000 projected this year to $114,000 projected next year.
10.1.
So we have taken from the personnel budget for programming the proposed expenditure for fixed assets and moved it from personnel to fixed assets. And again, that's on attachment 10.1.
Right. Okay. I see that, and you're going up from 184 to 211 in regulation.
That's correct.
So what are you adding to?
On the regulatory side?
Right.
You provided the executive director with a contract that triggered a salary increase. I've recommended $6,000 for temporary help to help us with backlogs on all the administrative things we're dealing with since rate regulation hit. And I'm also anticipating a need for temp help with the next go-around of notifications on rates. Well, that is when the phones hit. That's 16,000 of the change. The rest is what I'll detail for Mr. Yee, tying back to the ongoing changes in benefits.
So you got 16,000 additional in temporary help.
No, you have about 10,000 in the executive directors in my contract. 6,000 in temporary help is 16. And I'll have to get you the detail on the rest.
You've made it to about 200. You got another 11 to go here. You're going from 184.5 to 211.
Right, and then I have to look or bring you into the what details the changes in the benefits from 37 to 44.
That's your also the benefit variance.
Right.
The 81 to 89 or whatever it was, or 61 to 69.
Right, as it all comes together from the different angles.
Okay.
There are lots of spreadsheets where all this comes from. Be happy to provide those to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions from members? Okay. Mr. Costanis has written the members, if everyone received that, regarding a one-time 5% COLA adjustment to the community programming funding allocation. If any members want to comment on that, if not, we'll go right to public testimony. I want to make sure you all have received this memorandum from Mr. Costanis. Okay. Why don't we start with Mr. Bill White, and then Liz Rhodes will be next, and Charles Starzensky, I think. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Bill White. I'm the current chair of the board of Access Sacramento. I have a short prepared statement that I would like to read into the record. But before I do that, let me summarize it in a sentence or two. And it's simply, we do not have cost of living adjustment in our budget. The only way we would be able to do that is redirect the current funds, which currently have a ceiling on them, and we want to request that you consider a cost of living adjustment. Put that into context with this statement now. I'm pleased to report that our fellow citizens, individuals and groups from every one of your districts included, have made this past year a record-breaking year at Access Sacramento's Coloma Community Center facilities. Hundreds of Sacramento residents have taken our training classes and then produced more radio and television programs than ever, and the finest quality of locally produced programs you have ever seen as well. My use of the expression finest quality is affirmed by the fact that in the last few weeks alone, Sacramento County producers won 3 National Hometown Awards and 2 Bay Area Cable Excellence Awards. As a community of all ages, ethnic groups, religions, creeds, and political parties, we are poised to deliver yet another year of quality community-based cable television and radio, showcasing the best our Sacramento County citizens have to offer. You may recall from previous presentations that nearly 60% of all our cable programming is produced right here in Sacramento County. Furthermore, nearly all of it is unique to our community and is original material as well. The interest in producing and viewing local programming is growing. Our budget request is modest when compared to needs expressed to us by our community. However, we are aware that there are other needs as well. I understand that community program grantees, those not having built-in cost of living increases, have each asked that you provide us with that much-needed assistance as well. Access equipment, facilities, operating expenses, and more importantly, our employees have not had a COLA, a cost of living adjustment, in 4 years, over 4 years. Your consideration in this matter would be most appreciated by our board. In closing, I wish to thank each of you for your support this past year. As our statistics and awards indicate most articulately, the community has responded with an outpouring of local productions, and in the coming year we hope to do even more. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any questions from the commission? Okay. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Cooper.
I just wanted to pass out, I'm Ron Cooper, Executive Director at Access Sacramento, and I just wanted to pass out notification. I had mentioned before that the National Information Infrastructure hearing that was in Sunnyvale a few weeks ago, that we do have the taping, and this is the announcement, so those who are interested can tune in. 6 hours of very, very informative information by Chair Larry Irving and members of the Department of Commerce and FCC. So,
okay. I have a question to ask.
Yes, question.
Because I just wanted to look. I was noticing, like, under, I'll be asking this of each one because I'm just curious about the different ways that everybody carries out their operation. I understand, for instance, on the Cable Television Commission, when Rich lists 5.3, that's actually your administrative staff, right? That doesn't count the intern positions.
That's correct.
Okay. On access, I tried to add up. I don't see that in terms of numbers. I'd have to count the positions. Are those actually full-time positions or part-time, or how many? If you were trying to say you had a core staff and interns, or a core staff and employees, because I noticed your total for personnel services is $329,704, and I'm trying to figure out, are those full-time, part-time, so how many people do you actually have compared to the people who are actually out there producing the different shows?
There's a core staff of approximately 10 full-time equivalents, which is down from 13 full-time equivalents a couple of years ago. There also a line item budget for as-needed production assistance as a part of that. But the core group, to answer your question, Supervisor Collin, is 10 full-time equivalents. The bulk of the production, and again, this distinguishes Access Sacramento from the other grantees. The bulk of the production is that those full-time equivalent staff people coordinate the activities of hundreds and hundreds of volunteers in their production efforts. So it's our way of saying there's a lot of bang for the buck in terms of those staff people whose primary focus is to facilitate an average of 25 hours of original local programming produced in our facility every week, every week.
Okay. So if that's what I was asking about, because if you've got 10 full-time equivalents, that's why when I was trying to count the number of people and trying to figure it out in under this system, I think, well, I come up with maybe 12, and but it's really 10 full-time equivalents.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Rhodes.
I'm Liz Rhodes with the Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium, and I carry with me a message today to you from our chairperson, Dave Vacca, and it's on video. So with wonders of technology, if we could roll that video,
Okay.
He has our presentation for you today.
Why don't we roll that video, and the lights are coming down and we can see it.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Vacca, and I'm chairperson of the Sacramento Educational Cable Consortium. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today, but I'm finding it somewhat difficult to be in two places at once. At this very moment, I'm in budget planning in my own school district. But via technology, I did want to take the opportunity to review a few highlights of the SCCC 94-95 budget and the major goals of our organization. In addition, I have a few comments regarding SCCC's request for increased funds. As in past years, SCCC will continue to provide an educational service to the Sacramento community. SCCC will supplement the commission grant of $230,000 with another $1.8 million in direct and in-kind contributions. The end result will be the continued service of 2 channels programmed with video 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. SCCC will continue to expand the partnerships it has established with community members, KVIE, Access, and Metro Cable. Hopefully, these partnerships will result in more efficient uses of community programming dollars. SCCC is very much aware of the tentative nature of commission funding and will continue to actively pursue additional funding sources. A major emphasis of SCCC activities in the coming year will be exploration of opportunities for SCCC to participate in the development of the superhighway in Sacramento. Specifically, the role SCCC might play with GSEN, Golden State Educational Network, and with the NII and Clinton's Goals 2000. Turning to another area, SCCC appreciates the time you have spent with us during the past week and your consideration of our request for an increase in funding. We know you understand our situation and that you will take measures to provide appropriate increases within the means of your $326,000 fund balance. We respectfully request that you consider your own 27% increase in funding your administration needs when you determine the grant levels for SCCC. Briefly, SCCC would utilize additional dollars to increase promotional activities, replace aging equipment, and to increase opportunities for students to produce programs. Details on these plans are available to you upon request. Please review the entitlement grant application that we sent to you. You may refer any specific questions you have to our Executive Director, Liz Rhodes. I thank you for your interest and support. In closing, I saved some good news for last. For the 1994 fall semester, SCCC will be increasing the number of credit courses from 23 to 34 classes available to the community from SCCC member institutions. I would like to introduce you to some of our local stars, the SCCC cable television educators.
Just in summation of that, we were very proud to let you see those people because sometimes, since those people are in the daytime, you don't see them, and there'll be quite a few more next year. And we have a great deal of enthusiasm from those people who are offering classes, and for the first time in our history are dealing with the situation where we have more teachers who want to teach on cable than we've ever had in the past. And we don't have enough time for all of the classes to be able to accommodate all the classes. And that's a wonderful opportunity for us and for this community. Finally, in regard to the request for the increase in funds, where we appreciate the effort that Councilman Castanis has put forth, we are asking that, looking at that fund balance, that you consider a 20% increase for all the community programmers. We feel that that is within that fund balance that you have of the $326,000, and you will still have funds remaining after a 20% increase, depending on how you decide to cut that up. So with that, if there are any questions,
Any
I
questions?
thank you for your time.
You have a question?
Same question.
Okay.
I'm
Total
trying to
number?
work out your personnel.
Specifically in the budget that you have in front of you, there are 5 full-time people, and there are numerous part-time people depending upon need, depending upon where we get additional funds, and that can range anywhere from I believe we have 22 part-time students over at CSUS. We have, I believe, 4 part-time students at San Juan High School. I don't know how many we have down at Florin High. And those numbers vary upon the productions, and the source for the funds to pay those people vary upon funds that we have, funds that the institutions have. We're kind of a mixed bag, so it's real difficult, other than to say that we do have the 5 full-time staff people in our office.
Okay, one of the other things, when I was looking under services and supplies then, and it says playback operators, is that really personnel, or is that, what does that mean? Why would it be down there if I'm thinking of it in terms of people programming, or is this equipment?
No, that is people. That is an indirect to the CSUS Foundation. We hire students over at CSUS to do the specific playback of our videotapes.
Okay.
I suppose it could have been transferred up into another area. It's just for us, it's always been down there under specifically programming, and that's why it shows up there.
And just a comment, because I was noticing when you look at rent for, whether it's for us, whether it's for you, or any of the program operators, the rent, and then you compare that to the insurance. For all of us, our insurance is really high, and and I noticed that it's also high in comparison to rent for everybody else.
You'd rather rent the insurance?
I don't know. I never understand why it's so high.
On the commission's insurance, you'll see it's gone from an excess of $100,000 down to about $30,000 because we haven't been involved in too many claims lately.
Okay, so it's ours is really going to make a big drop.
Ours has made a big drop over the
Yeah,
last
it's made a big drop.
4 years.
Right, but even at that, when you look at that in comparison to, facility rent and everything else, insurance is really eating up a big chunk of everybody's budget. So.
Part of the problem that we have with that, and I don't know how different it would be, is that there are requirements within our contracts. And I don't know, if those requirements were changed, what that would do to the levels. But anywhere you go, insurance is high.
See Mr. Cox.
Insurance is great.
And that's why it's so high.
Right.
Thank you. Charles Starmitsky?
Starzinski.
The
Great
Z?
name.
Starzinski.
Oh, that's a Z in there,
We hear
huh?
it every day.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm here as a poor substitute for Phil Corriveau, and I didn't even bring a tape of him or anything like that. So,
How about a virtual reality check?
you could get him on the phone, I guess. I want to thank you on behalf of KXPR and KXJZ and all of our members and all of the people at Metro Cable Channel 14 who I believe still simulcast KXJZ's Morning Edition Monday through Friday, at least for some hours of the morning. For your past support and would hope that you would continue to fund the programming that you do fund according to our budget request for this coming fiscal year, which is about $17,000. And what that does basically is help us offset the cost of producing some in-depth news and information features and arts features for our own Morning Edition program, which is then carried by Channel 14 and sometimes even by Channels 21 and 20, or 21 and 22.
I'd like to be done before then.
That's on that extra channel on the cable some of the TV sets, right? Where you can get the extra channels, the extra audio channels.
No, this isn't on the separate audio channel. This is as the audio under like 14.
Oh, under 14.
When we're running bulletin board.
That's so it's on the.
Yeah.
It's on. So it's in the back of on the back of Channel 14's billboard in the morning.
Right.
I think what Charles is trying to say nicely is that KXJZ is preempted by the Board of Supervisors and City Council meetings when they start.
That happens, Charles.
And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Starzinski?
Fairly straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah, you do a great job. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay, next we have Jan Tillman.
Good afternoon. I'm Jan Tillman from KVIE. John Hirschberger regrets that he could not be here this afternoon. He's out of town. I regret that we didn't videotape John Hirschberger because we all know how good he is at asking for money on television. I hope you've had the opportunity to review KVIE's plan and budget for fiscal 95. I do have extra copies if you need them. In the next fiscal year, we are planning to provide a level of service consistent with the current year. We worked deliberately and effectively at improving our program service over the past 6 years. Our 24-hour service now includes 15 to 20 non-repeat program hours each day. In 1992, we began an aggressive outreach for public service announcements and now dedicate a majority of our airtime between programs to providing viewers with public service information. Examples include health service information, safety, recycling, crime prevention, and anti-drug abuse information. This year, with the help of the Commission, we have been able to provide public service announcement production support in our local community. This is for organizations who don't have resources to do their own public information spot production. Currently, we're working with Sacramento Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Youth Authority, Sacramento Adoption Center, and the Francis House of Sacramento, and that's just to name a few. This has been a really rewarding experience for us and for those organizations, and we do want to thank you for making that possible. Our budget for the 24-hour service on Channel 7 in fiscal 95 is $344,165. Our grant is $111,905. KVIE has absorbed much of this service into its own operation. It provides $175,750 of in-kind services, including administration, engineering, maintenance, production support, and ILA insurance. In fiscal 95, as our budget shows, KVIE must also subsidize the service with cash in the amount of $47,711. The cash supplement addresses the incremental costs of operating. We have had the opportunity to talk with some of you about our budget concerns. I want to first say thank you for the support that you have provided over the years. We know from the response that we get from our viewers, from subscriber surveys, and from comments that we've heard from you, that our service is valuable to this community. At this time, I'd like to ask the Commission to consider the community programmer's request for a COLA increase. KVIE and SECC have provided that request to each of you in writing. We have had no adjustment for COLA since 1991. With that consideration, our request is for a 20% adjustment. KVIE has an additional request we have also submitted to each of you in writing. That is for an equity adjustment. Over the years, the fact that KVIE's allocation is substantially lower than the other grantees has been acknowledged. Until now, the means to address that inequity have not been available to you. The fund balance does now provide the means. Our request is for a base allocation increase of $50,000. We have discussed our request for this base allocation increase with the executive directors of the other community programming groups. They have no objection to KVIE's request for this increase from the fund balance, and it does not adversely affect their grants. That's why I'm so delighted to be able to stand here now and finally be able to ask for an increase. I would like to answer any questions that you have about our budget. I will tell you that in response to the question I know you'll ask, the expense budget for Cable 7 in the salary and wage line item includes 3 full-time positions. Those are dedicated to the Cable 7 operation. That does not reflect any salary consideration for me as the executive director of that activity or for the support that personnel that KVIE provides.
Okay.
So those are absorbed in a different way.
Yes, by Channel 6.
All right. Any other questions? Any other questions? No other questions?
I have no questions for Jan. I had a question for Rich.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Save that to the end.
All right. And our last speaker on this, Jamie Starks.
I'll add that this is a representative from RCC-TV, one of your community programming grantees, in which you allocate the channel. The budget she's talking about is one that they fund entirely themselves. All the programming that they do is without financial consideration other than the channel itself.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Ms. Starks.
Good afternoon. I'm the program director for RCC-TV, and I've been there about a year and a half, and I'm happy to report that our 24-hour Channel 20 has increased its local programming from 10 hours a week to 20 hours a week, and we're very, very proud of that. We do receive 2 satellite feeds. One is Faith and Values, which was formerly Visions and Acts, and we also receive another satellite feed, which is EWTN, so they fill in a lot of our time. We are expanding, and a lot of the faith community has been approaching RCC-TV to cablecast their programs. We have increased, I shouldn't say increased, our programming contains most of the faith denominations in Sacramento, and we're wanting to include more. Our goal this year, we've accomplished almost all of our goals last year, and we're wanting to increase more local programs. And to do that, we've begun a fundraiser. And that fundraiser will be that we will have a studio that will have pre- and post-production so that we can allow the faith community to come in, produce their programs for a very low cost. In the meantime, we get a lot of calls in the faith community wanting to produce programs that cannot afford it, don't have the equipment. And many times I do refer them to Access and also other professional companies. But we're very just happy to report that we're growing, and we haven't had any complaints. We've had a lot of praise.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for coming
you.
and giving your testimony. Appreciate that. Any other members of the audience would like to come forward and speak on this item? Okay, seeing none. Any other members of the commission have any other questions, concerns?
A question of Mr. Spasto.
Mr. Spasto, we have a question from Ms. Collin and then Mr. Cox.
Mr. Collins first, Jim.
Yes.
Okay. My question relates to the reserve that all of the groups are looking at. That shows in the budget, and wondering whether that's a reserve that will. Did it come from one-time sources? Was it slowly accumulated? Is it something that we can count on?
If I bring you back to the budget display on our fund balance on page 3 of item 2, starting on July 1st, your fund balance is 0. We will have allocated every dime of available funds to your designated reserve, the $1.7 million. The $326,000, which is projected to accrue in the next 12 months, comes from the difference between what this budget proposes to spend and the revenue from Sacramento Cable Television and settlement fees of $2.5 million.
All right.
So it's a projected to accrue type monies.
That's correct. When Mr. Castanis called yesterday and asked that I prepare for him a recommendation for the cost of living, I included in that the staff analysis that if you do make any decisions to make additional augmentations, my analysis of cash flow would be that you not direct me to release the cash until next March, because we won't have the cash until then.
Okay. And how do we normally do the grants? Do we normally grant in a lump sum?
No,
or do we grant on a monthly basis?
On a quarterly basis.
Quarterly.
We take the approved entitlement grant amount, and each quarter we have checks cut by the auditor.
All right. Mr. Cox.
Mr. Spasso, you're essentially saying that if we do this budget augmentation, that you won't have the dollars to do this until next March?
Until the third quarter, right? I'm saying make the cash flow problem the grantee's problem, not ours.
Just kind of run me through the numbers so that I might have an understanding of that. How does it work?
Starting July 1st, we get on August 1st, we get $625,000 per quarter from Sacramento Cable Television. We use that to pay the bills in and out during the course of the year. I'm projecting some significant cash flow needs in February and March for the last round of the protective litigation. So it would be the last quarter before I see that we actually come above the cash flow line.
You provide us with a profit and loss from the balance sheet, but you don't provide us with a cash flow statement.
Actually, we don't provide you with profit and loss. There is a schedule that the auditor prepares that reviews cash flow, but not in a typical business sense. Government accounting is somewhat different, I think, than you're probably used to.
Perhaps you could, in fact, provide me with a cash flow so that do you have it on a spreadsheet?
I do.
Perhaps we could see it on a month-to-month basis. That'd be fine, Mr. Chairman, if we could just see that. We still have the ability to augment this. We have the ability to augment the budgets and make the augmentation conditioned upon the cash flow. I don't suspect it makes any great deal of difference to the grantees whether or not they receive it in March, as long as they know that they're going to receive it. They would have the ability to do their own budgeting that way. The real question in my mind is whether or not this board wants to, in fact, increase the grantees' allocation by approximately $250,000, which would take our reserve down from $320,000 down to about $70,000. I think that's the real issue that that we need to be faced with. And when we do that, then it seems to me that the question ought to be whether or not, if that decision is made, whether or not we still retain the baseline agreement of 1992, I believe, which is the million, whatever the number is, $1,000,008, if that's the number.
It's $1,038,000 is your current.
Excuse me, $1,038,000. Whether we retain that as the baseline, or whether we've automatically increased that and make it be known at this juncture that it is a 20% increase for 94-95, and they may or may not receive that amount next year, but the baseline still remain $1,038,000.
Well, can I pick up on that?
Sure. Yes, Mr. Dickinson.
That's the concern.
Yeah, I'm not. Maybe you answered this when I asked it and I didn't hear it, but I would. Well, whatever. Do you have an out year projection beyond 95 as to what they're going to be?
Yes, it's very simple. If we're comfortable with the assumption that settlement fee revenues will continue at $2.5 million a year, if you accept that assumption,
right,
then out years are that you will, on current budget, throw off $500,000 every year. Over and above distribution to the counties, you will have $500,000 on top every year. The difficulty is, and I'll come to our report on legislation, is what I see as very strong movement at the national, at the federal level, to obliterate franchise fees. And that's the one that's very difficult to call. I've said for the last year that I thought within 3 years we'd see a change in franchise fees. And that the discussion you had regarding setting aside the $1.7 million, it was in anticipation of that. So it's one of those on-balance things. With the $1.7 million set aside, franchise fees could cease and you could go one more year.
Right.
I think that's fairly comfortable. I don't believe you'll have a franchise fee decision that is triggered by telephone company, telco entry into the cable business and vice versa in this next fiscal year. You've probably got one more year's grace.
Well, you've already said these aren't franchise fees.
I'm sorry, but the link is that under your amended and restated franchise resolution, if franchise fees go away to any other cable operator in the country by virtue of a congressional decision, the settlement fee payments you've agreed to go away as well.
Okay.
So it's that bridge.
Okay.
So my point being then, Mr. Chairman, I don't think that we get up and begin the process of trying to determine whether or not all the street lights are green before we start. And for that reason, I don't see any difficulty in augmenting the budgets for these grantees on the basis of 20%, 18, 20%, recognizing that next year we may or may not be able to do that. And the reality is that budgets are made on an annual basis, and you just kind of have to take it as they come.
Annually. Now, let me just get clear on this. This Castanis proposal is just 5%.
Mr. Castanis called me yesterday and asked...
Just 5%.
That's what he requested.
But Mr. Cox is proposing more than that.
That's correct. That's what I heard.
I'm essentially acknowledging that there are some reasons why the grantees ought to have some increases. It's there as far as the reserves are concerned. The question is whether or not a $70,000 reserve is adequate.
Is it adequate? Have we had a...
Well, if you have an annuity stream coming in, it's adequate. The question is that if you take $250,000 out of the budget, and all of a sudden the annuity stream is not there, $250,000 doesn't save the organization. I mean, everything else goes away. And so we're not talking about revenue now. What we're really talking about is a cash flow. And it seems to me that we can make that contribution this year and look at next year. We have nothing to either win or lose other than the fact that the grantees would receive an increased funding in March.
I see.
Ask
Okay.
Mr. Cox a
Yes,
question.
Ms. Collins.
In that, were you taking into consideration the equity adjustment for KVIE?
I don't know. I didn't look at that precisely. The numbers that I took off, there was about $250,000, and so however that KVIE is down about
That includes it, doesn't it?
KVIE is down about $33,000 from last year. They got $260,000 last year, and they're going to get $233,000 this year, and so
I have no objection to that equity adjustment, and I'm flexible on the COLA issue, but I agree with your reasoning that if you don't have the flow coming in, you simply don't have it, and everybody goes down. So.
Okay, so is there any...
I would move to enhance to augment the grantees' budgets by the approximately 20% plus the KVIE enhancements, the total package is somewhere close to close to 250,000.
Mr. Cox, let's see if we can lay this out. The 20% would be 207,611. The 50,000 adjustment to KVIE would be 50,000, with 50,000 totaling 257,611 coming out of your undesignated reserve, leaving your projected year-end balance or beginning balance 95-96 at 68,865.
Close enough for cable work, sir.
Okay, there's a second.
Let me ask a question.
Yes, question.
The 20% figure that's represented as the COLA adjustment, what COLA?
No, that's just a euphemistic term.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying
I think
to...
it is too, because it depends on whether you put it over the total grant, which I think they're looking at, rather than putting it over just personnel. If you put it just over personnel, it's a smaller figure.
Well, we're talking about essentially 2 years of, or 3.
4 years.
I mean, this is...
90-91, was that the one? When was the last
the baseline,
COLA? 90-90
last year was 91, but was it 90-91 or 91-92? It was 90-91?
91-92 by my recollection. The base has been consistent since 91-92.
So it hasn't been an adjustment. It's been flatlined since
That's correct.
91...
92.
That's 2 years, heading into the 3rd year.
This would be the starting of 4th.
Oh, all right. Okay. I'm sorry. Fence post rule here, huh?
Right.
Okay. So you're talking about an adjustment, but we're in something other than COLA. I mean, this isn't cost of living.
Two separate things.
It's an adjustment to the
Mr.
grant.
Costanis used the term COLA and 5% in his phone call to me yesterday. The discussion now, the 20% recommendation, and I agree with Mr. Cox, is a euphemism. COLA is not the right word. This is an adjustment, an increase.
An increase.
Right. Okay. But what's
it's an undesignated.
I guess my question is what's the basis of the percentage change? Is it what's it tied to? I guess I've missed that in all this somehow.
It's
like
what was
total
presented
grant.
by the community programming
It isn't
grantees.
tied to anything. The question is whether or not they're I could have used them. I listened to the presentations made by the various people and used the term 18, 19, 20%, somewhere in that neighborhood. And not because of the fact that there was anything magic about that, but reality is that this commission, as long as we have an annuity stream, doesn't need a huge reserve. I mean, we could, from a balance sheet standpoint, from a cash flow, you pay it out when you have the ability to pay it out. And so if we've got 70,000 or 65,000, we're in reasonable good shape, as long as we manage our cash flow.
Well, I understand that point. What I'm trying to understand is why this figure is opposed to 10%.
Mr. Dickinson, do you have another proposal?
Well, I'm just trying. 15. I'm trying. I mean, if you wanted to make, even if you made it to over the whole program budget, and you said, if you'll forgive the use of the term, cost of living, I mean, then you'd be looking over 3 years at maybe 10% or something like that. So I'm just trying to understand where 20% comes from as what's represented to be an equitable adjustment. And I didn't think, it just occurs to me as this discussion's going on.
But there is no rationale.
There is no rationale.
Well,
maybe there is a rationale.
It sounds like part of the rationale is we may not have any money for these people in another 2 years, and 300,000 isn't going to do anybody any good because it isn't going to make them enough. It isn't going to give them enough money to operate for a year.
No, I start from the assumption that, notwithstanding all the statements in good faith made to the contrary, the moment you build money into a budget, whether people think they have an entitlement or not, they do certain things that build in costs that have effects on real people, that acquire equipment and so on in future years that then become part of what needs to be...
Of the budget.
Yeah, that
well,
needs
would
to be financed.
Would you feel comfortable if they all got up here and said that they won't build it into their budget?
Well, it doesn't matter. I believe they would say that.
They would say it?
I believe they would say it. We won't count on it.
Well, I would expect them to say that as well. I don't have any difficulty with that. The reality is not the magic formula of 20% or 22%, whatever the number is. That's not the situation. Is what's the proper reserve? A proper reserve is somewhere between 50 and 75,000 in my mind. And so when the presentation was made that, hey, here's an opportunity because you've got more money than you need, we aren't going to take $250,000 and return it to the subscribers. I mean, we aren't going to do that. So the next best situation is we ought to at least give it to those people who are doing the local programming. That they've all participated. It's frankly tokenism. And after all, we did increase the parental support by some $160,000. And it just seems to me that that's a reasonable approach. And to the extent that we can work it out in a cash flow basis, they get the money in March. And part of my motion was to have the baseline year remain at 1991 or 2, whatever the year was, to get the $1,038,000. So there's no expectation next year that it's going to be there.
Is it? Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this item? I just have a friendly amendment to the motion. I have seen for a long time that Channel 14 needs some upgrading on its software on all the government.
There's a program on Tuesday evening on Channel 14 that really needs some upgrading.
You talking about content?
I think it's live, too.
Plenty of software.
I think we've all watched it. It is live.
What did you? The friendly amendment. It was just part of the friendly amendment was that we designate a certain amount of money, and the executive director could come back and apply it towards software.
The motion you have before you is an amendment to, as I understood, to the $1,038,000 would include the programming allocation.
Well, let's make sure then, as a friendly amendment, that portion of that, those monies for Channel 14 would go toward software upgrades for how the screen looks.
Under our rules, we'd have to come back to you with a budget revision in order to expend the funds if you approve this amendment.
Okay, and I was referring specifically to how the Cal Channel looks, how C-SPAN looks, and trying to come up to that level. And apparently, you need some software enhancements. Believe it or not, it just, I mean, I watch the stuff.
If you see,
maybe you don't watch
in the current year's budget, we were able to make changes from this term. No. There's software upgrades that I think need to be. One last comment for staff for the purpose of the record, so that in making this decision, you're on board. The Commission should be aware that it has the discretion, total discretion, on the use of these funds, whether these funds go wherever you go, that you have that authority.
Well, that's not in my motion, though. My motion is to do an augmentation and to let the grantee make that decision. And to the extent that the grantee said don't act properly, we'll have an opportunity another time.
Well, we're the grantee in the government channel, so I was just amending that if you would agree to that amendment, because I think there's a need internally. The executive director is going to be coming back with a report on that need. But if that would be agreeable.
Could we take that as a separate motion from this one? This motion is on the other grantees. It's not included.
No, it includes.
The $1,038,000 is the total commitment of this body to community programming, including the government channel.
Yeah. And I don't have any difficulty with that aspect of the thing. We control this budget here.
Yeah. Okay, well, if that's fine, then that'll be the motion. I'm going to be gone in November, so it's only to help all of you who are going to remain behind.
You're all heart, Josh.
I knew I was.
Call for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, since the
Does
motion,
anyone know what the question is at this point?
the question is a 20% increase amounting to $257,611 to all the community grantees. Then there was
a 20% increase of $207,611, a $50,000 upward adjustment to KVIE as a one-time addition to the community programming allocation payable in the third fiscal quarter, totaling $257,611.
That's for sure. And the baseline remains $1,038,000.
Okay. All right. Very good. If there's no other discussion with my amendment, the clerk please call the roll.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, champagne on the Titanic for a while.
On the Titanic.
Probably appropriate.
Well, it sounds like that's the case coming up here, but we can drink champagne for a while. Okay, item 3.
Is there anything more we need to do with the total budget today?
Yes.
Okay, what do you need?
You've made the documentation. Was there a movement of the staff, a motion on the staff recommendation to the rest of the budget as amended?
Yes.
To all the other
Yes.
items?
So moved.
Still on this. Okay. It's been moved by Collins, second by Yee.
You're
Any
adopting
discussion
the
on
preliminary and final budget as amended with
As
per
amended.
the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Yes.
With the spreadsheets as requested.
Right.
Spreadsheets.
Staff to
Mr.
respond
Cox.
with additional data.
Any public testimony on this this motion? Okay, seeing no public testimony, it's been moved by Collins, second by Yee. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the budget's been adopted. Okay,
Next
item
item.
number 3.
In fact, the report back, notice public hearing on ex parte regulations. At your last meeting, you provided staff with considerable comments on your sense of where the ex parte regulations fit in the grand jury response. We took those back, and Ms. Steiner has now taken your comments and worked those into a revised set of regulations. Yeah, we worked together on it, but let her take this item.
In light of your comments from your last meeting, we made several amendments to the proposed regulations. One would define an interested party. An interested party under the regulations would be those people to whom the ex parte communication prohibition would apply. And we've narrowed the world of people that the prohibition would apply to franchisees and licensees, their agents and employees, persons who have a financial interest in the enforcement matter or matter that's subject to the rules. And we've brought in the same definitions of financial interest that you're familiar with under the Political Reform Act, which you deal with for your own conflicts of interest, and organized civic, trade, and business groups that are formed that want to lobby on a particular matter that's the subject of the ex parte rules. So it would no longer in any way apply to the average subscriber. I can't imagine a situation at this point where it would apply to an average subscriber in a general enforcement matter. There was some discussion with respect to the penalties and monetary penalties, and Rich and I discussed that at some length, and we thought that probably the best thing to do was just to remove monetary penalties from the enforcement section and have the Commission deal with other types of sanctions that deal with the types of actions you might take on an enforcement proceeding or a proceeding subject to the ex parte rules, which could be delaying that matter, finding that a particular fact against the person who had violated the rule, those types of enforcement matters, rather than a monetary sanction. So we've taken the monetary sanctions out of the proposed rule. The other item that was discussed at some length was what happens if a commissioner gets a communication, or one of the commissioner's staff members gets a communication after notice has gone out that that matter is subject to the ex parte rule. And we've tried to clarify what would happen. Basically, the way the rules are drafted now, all a commissioner would have to do, or one of your staff members would have to do, is forward either the written communication that was received or a note outlining the content of an oral communication to your executive director, and then the executive director would take on the responsibility of providing notice to all the interested parties that this communication had occurred. And so the primary responsibility for reporting ex parte communications still rests on the person who made the communication, who initiated the communication. But if inadvertently you or one of your staff members should get that type of communication, the rule now says that you would inform the executive director, and the executive director would take it from there by informing the rest of the commissioners and the interested parties, so that everybody would be aware of the communication. We felt that with those kinds of changes, it clarified the obligations of the commissioners and your staffs. It narrowed the universe of people to which the rule would apply to really only those people that have a real interest in the outcome of the particular matter. And as you would recall, this doesn't apply to all of your proceedings. It would only apply to the specified proceedings, which are generally enforcement actions and rate regulations. The Commission would still have the ability in advance to determine that this rule shouldn't apply to a particular enforcement action or rate regulation, or to set up a subcommittee of some sort, of commissioners who would not be subject to the rule, so you could have informal discussions on the particular matter. It still requires notice given by the executive director to all the commissioners and to all known interested parties that the rule is in effect for this particular matter, so it shouldn't sneak up on anybody. And so we think at this point we've narrowed the rule based on the comments that we've received in the past, and made it better tailored to the types of activities that the Commission undertakes.
Okay.
If you have any questions,
Any questions for council on that? All right. Let me go to two speakers. Mr. Ron Cooper, you want to speak on this item?
No, I think you want to speak on 2.
No, that was 2 he wanted to speak.
Says 3.
Yeah, but his other thing said only.
Okay. Well, I have Darby Patterson. Did you want to speak on this? If necessary, it says here, so I don't know if it's necessary or not. Okay. Any questions from the Commission on this item? I have a question. What is the specific instance that this has been brought to? That is to say, how did this come up besides the grand jury, which didn't give a specific instance of a commissioner maybe speaking with the franchisee?
Only response to the grand jury is my comment. This is a process you started in March.
I guess I'm looking for why this was started. Was there a specific instance that a commissioner had conversations with the cable operator that I don't know about?
I don't have data to answer that.
Does anyone have an answer to that? No one has an answer.
I think I will answer from my perspective why we even started discussing it in response to the grand jury was overall the obvious notoriety that was happening at one time with this commission centered around an enforcement action or a probable cause action, really. And that brought up the concerns about were there occasions in a body when it was acting in a more judicial type of setting, that were there times when there should be rules, for instance, like the PUC has, or should we have disclosures of any meetings that have been held when the financial stakes are pretty high. And I asked the last time it was being discussed for examples of during, for instance, the life that we've been involved in terms of this commission, how many times would these type of formal type proceedings come under our purview? And it was very few. I think only 2 times in the whole time that we've been operating.
And it just so happens that one of those times was this time in question you're speaking of?
Yeah, I would assume so. And that does not say that in the future you might be faced with something as drastic as a termination of a franchise. I think it spells out in here some of the things where obviously there are large financial stakes in the decision, and I think that when it was drafted this time, you tried to be more specific about the FPPC's approach to some of the other parties in interest other than the franchisee, the franchise holder.
Okay, any other questions from the Commission on this item? No other questions. Is there a motion?
Motion to what?
A motion on this item. This is the ex parte regulations before us.
I would move adoption of the resolution.
Collins,
see if there's
Collins
any,
moves adoption.
Second.
Second by Dickinson. Any other discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman.
Is there any other discussion from the audience? No discussion from the audience. The public, Mr. Cox.
Mr. Chairman, let me just say one more time. This is an elected body. We come before our constituents on every 4 years. This is not necessary. There wasn't any allegation of wrongdoing. This board voted several months ago, as much as a year ago, when it was brought up whether or not we wanted ex parte rules. The board, in fact, voted no. It's now before us again. The answer ought to still be no. The fact of the matter is that we simply don't need those.
Okay. Any other discussion by the Commission?
No, I will just make one final argument in favor, because I do believe that we all are responsible elected officials. That's not the issue and has never been the issue. The issue is that there are certain proceedings where there are large financial interests at stake. There is a public perception out there that that perhaps undue influence could be given in private sessions that would never get into the public record. Whether we believe that or not is simply not the issue. The issue is public credibility, and our ultimate responsibility are to the consumers of this system and the cable subscribers. I think that we need the perception that when there are really termination proceedings or enforcement proceedings, that we ought to have something like this in place. It protects us, it protects the consumer, and I think ultimately it protects that perception out there that there is a level playing field for the consumers.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, the clerk please call the roll.
No.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Motion fails. All right. I guess we're on to next item, item 4.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you can take items 4 and 5 together. These are recommendations now with some changes since finding that we will not have a quorum for your July meeting. Recommend that you continue items 4 and 5 to your August 4th meeting, and subsequently recommend that you continue the general counsel contract with McDonough for Ms. Steiner's services to August 31st. That will allow you to consider your new general counsel decision in August and continue and keep things smooth and running through the end of August.
Who do we have?
I think I will indicate at this time, too, that I had conversations with Councilwoman Ortiz, who, had she been here today, would have voted yes on the ex parte.
Ms. Collins,
we're letting you know
Ms.
that
Collins,
it'll be brought back.
we just have to keep to the agenda. If you please express your views through the chair, I'll address you. We're on another item at this time. We may go back to that item if you'd like.
No, I don't want to go back to the item. I'm just saying that this item could be brought back.
Well, we're on another item, so I have to rule you out of order for now, and I'd be pleased to entertain.
Honest, Josh.
There's no one here, Ms. Collins, who would deny your honesty or anyone else's honesty here. But according to parliamentary procedure, we have to go through the agenda. If you'd like to go back to that item, I'll recognize you after this. Item 4 and 5, the executive director is suggesting we take together, I understand.
That's for the sake of time.
I have to keep my thought process clear, and if we go back to other items, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. So items 4 and 5.
Recommend you take 4 and 5, continue them to your August meeting, your July meeting, and that you continue and you extend the general counsel contract through August 31st.
Okay, Mr. Cox moves, Mr. Yee seconds. Any discussion on these items? All right, is there any public testimony on these items? All right, seeing no public testimony, will the clerk please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Ms. Collins, I'll recognize you for your statement on the previous item, item 3, so we can hear it clearly.
Okay. Under item 3, I'm just indicating at some point this will probably be back before us, and I wanted to make it clear that it will, because in a conversation that I had with Councilwoman Ortiz this morning at breakfast, indicated she could not attend this meeting, was the alternate to be here, and had intended to support this type of approach.
Okay.
So just so you know, and obviously, at the time it's brought back, you might not even be on commission anymore.
It's possible. There's parliamentary procedures that have to be abided by. If Ms. Ortiz or whoever else wants to bring an item that's been defeated back, I'm sure there's a way to do that. I don't see a problem with that. I may or may not be here, but that's to be seen.
Chairman, I
Mr.
want to
Cox.
call to your attention that Mr. Johnson, who is a member of this meeting, Lord was here, he would have voted no, sir.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, what about folks? I just hope I never speak for anybody, but you know that's okay. I guess we can do what we want to do here if we just keep going with it. All right, so we'll I'm sure revisit this issue prior to November 28th. I'm sure. Oh no, you don't think it is? Okay. The next item, franchise.
Depends on who decides to show up, obviously.
Well, I show up all the time, so...
I guess the other situation is, Mr. Chairman, we can just continue to play the game, and if one wins, then there'll be another...
Well, we did play that game very effectively once before on another issue, did we not? And that was really out of order that day, but nobody brought up the parliamentary procedure at that time, Mr. Cox.
Members, I think we should just address your comments through the chair so we can have some decorum here. That would be appreciated. I'm sure when you sit in the chair as the chair of the Board of Supervisors, I understand that, but as a member of the Board of Supervisors, when you sit in the chair, I'm sure that you would like some decorum as well. So, we'll go on to franchisee presentations. Do we have, I saw one franchisee, here's another one. If you'd like to come forward. Sure, come right up.
I'm Darby Patterson with Sacramento Cable, and I know we're running right up on 4:30 and everybody wants to get moving. So what I have to give you will take about 2 minutes of your time, and while I'm passing this out, I want to entertain you with just a little bit of really important music. So can you hit it, Sam?
Do we have music coming too? I could too, but then we lost one.
Are there 3 apiece? Is that what you want us to do?
Oh. All right.
Well, Galt has 3.
Galt has 3.
That's one each.
Galt needs.
Yours.
My best friend.
I don't disagree with you, but I... 4 years, but I don't want to have it.
Is my microphone still on here?
Yes,
Good.
it is.
Okay, I don't want you to have to listen to too much of that, but I wanted to tell you that the woman who's singing there is a local woman named Rosetta Mines. She's a fantastic talent. She's sung gospel all over the United States. She actually wrote the song that you were listening to. That's why I took that little piece. And as you can see by the posters that I'm giving you, we're sponsoring the 4th Annual Sacramento Gospel Festival, June 11th and 12th, down in Old Sacramento. And it is actually the largest gospel festival in the state of California. It started out about 4 years ago with 500 people, sort of word of mouth from one church to the next. It grew to a few thousand people last year. And in December, the producer, Joe Mines, came to me and said, we could use a little financial help here and we could use some advertising. Can you help us? And I thought it sounded like a great idea because I just really love gospel music. And it's a really wonderful reflection of a culture that we can really all identify with because it's become really a multicultural kind of music and purely American in its nature. So we're real excited about doing this. We certainly hope that you'll put those posters up someplace, maybe in your neighborhood or at a store or someplace where other people can enjoy them as well. The festival for 2 days is absolutely free, meaning families can come to this and enjoy both days. We're going to help raise some money through some fundraising there for the Sacramento Urban League to help them on their great quest to build a job training center. All of our people at Sacramento Cable are real excited. We've got a lot of volunteers, people who are going to show up, and we're hoping that tens of thousands of people come and enjoy this 2 days and celebrate that with us. Our motto for this day is that gospel is for all God's children, and we hope we see all you children there as well.
Well, good. Well,
Thank you.
That's beautiful. You've come a long way since the print media, Ms. Patterson. I mean, just beautiful.
I hope you're not saying anything about the print media. I still am in love with print media.
Yeah, I know you're still in love with it. No, I appreciate it. It's beautiful. It was a beautiful to have that.
Well,
all
thank
right.
you for your time.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. This is the public's opportunity to discuss matters not on the agenda. Any members of the public would like to come forward?
Mr. Chairman, we got staff status report. That was the one you requested that Sacramento Cable respond on the status of the probable cause hearing. And that was under my item. And I additionally have briefly 2 things to report to you.
Okay, item number 7 then.
Right. Quickly, you may want to ask Penny or Sac Cable to respond on the status of the probable cause determination. Okay. I did include in the agenda packet the correspondence between
Okay, Ms. Costa, legal counsel for Sacramento Cable.
Yeah, one of the things that's missing, it's probably because it just happened the end of last week, was my letter to Bob Hunt the same day as his to mine, which occurred the same day as a phone call I had with him where I shared with him the address and phone number and other numbers of Judge Dunham. The conversations I've had with Mr. Hunt over the past couple of weeks have been that we are still interested in pursuing a potential settlement of that matter or a negotiation of it. I have promised him that I'm putting together a proposal which I will present to him within the next few days. If that turns out not to be something that resolves the matter, we have been in contact with Judge Dunham. We are looking at rescheduling a status conference and moving ahead with the enforcement proceeding there. Hopefully that's not something that either of us are going to have to endure, but we should know within the next week or so how this is going to resolve itself.
Well, members, I brought this forward because I thought it was lagging behind a little bit and wanted to kind of prompt all of us to be moving forward with a decision on it. And
I think we all appreciate that, and I think from both sides this is an issue that we'd like to get resolved one way or another. As I said, hopefully it will be resolved through a negotiation and not through a proceeding. But
Good. Well, we'll look forward to that in the next few days.
Mr. Chairman, quickly, 2 other items under the staff status report. Recall that in January we filed comments on the FCC's equipment compatibility, that is the issue of making cable television and electronic equipment, consumer TVs, friendly, user-friendly. 3 decisions, a big, thick document, 60 pages. 3 things that impact us. One, effective May 31st, a couple days ago, the cable company can no longer charge for activating the use of subscriber-owned remotes, nor restrict that use in any way. So if you have your own universal remote, all the cable boxes have to be turned on to use that. Cable industry has to provide consumer education by October, essentially describing the brands of remote controls and other equipment that you can buy retail to use on your equipment. And an item that we commented very strongly on is that in October '95, cable operators must make available these scrambler converter boxes with multiple tuners. This would be at subscriber cost, but would give you the ability to watch one thing and record another, or use the picture-in-picture functions. Additionally, the FCC laid out new definitions for cable-ready sets, some dates and times in the future when all electronics have to be compatible. 1, 2.
Does that include the 3-screen TVs?
That's picture-in-picture.
Yeah.
Right. The boxes for that, the converter boxes, have to be available at, again, at subscriber cost a year from October. On legislation, the federal legislation we commented on previously seems to be a bit bogged down. There were hearings on the Senate side last week. There's one more scheduled. It's hard to say. Some people say that a re-reg telco bill will get out this year. Others say not. We're watching it. On the state level, one bill that staff provide testimony on having to do with cable consumer privacy passed out of the Senate to the Assembly. And lastly, as we stand now, your next meeting is August 4th in this chamber at 2:30.
Okay, August 4th, this chamber, 2:30. Any members of the public would like to come forward?
So we
and,
didn't change that to later?
I'm sorry.
I thought you were going to change that August date to a later date.
It looks now like we'll need the August 4th meeting based on the actions today, what we didn't get through.
Okay.
And then if we need, it's likely we'll need a special meeting on August 25th. We'll address that on August 4th.
Okay. Any members of the public would like to come forward at this time on any items not on the agenda? Okay. Well, then, if there's no objections, adjourn. Adjourn. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Sacramento City Council.